Captain James Cook gripped the command chair as the Prometheus Rising shuddered out of hyperspace. The stars shifted from streaks of light back to distant points, and the familiar hum of the ship's engines settled into a steady rhythm. It was March 15th, 2387, and this moment marked humanity's farthest journey from Earth. Status report, Minho called out, his eyes scanning the bridge where his crew worked at their stations. All systems normal, Captain, replied Engineer Nam Seojin from his console. Jump drive is cooling down perfectly. Minho nodded and turned to the main view screen. For a moment, he expected to see the usual emptiness of deep space, maybe a few distant stars, perhaps an asteroid field. What he saw instead made him forget to breathe. Captain, whispered Navigation Officer Park Hannah, her voice barely audible. Are you seeing this? Massive structures floated in the void ahead of them. Not one or two, but dozens. They were clearly artificial, their surfaces smooth and gleaming with a metallic sheen that caught and reflected the light of nearby stars. The largest structure was easily the size of a small moon, while others stretched for kilometers in perfect geometric patterns. Take us closer, Minho ordered, his voice steady, despite the excitement building in his chest. But keep us at a safe distance. As the ship moved forward, more details became visible. The structures were beautiful in their complexity, covered with intricate designs and what appeared to be docking bays. Smaller craft were attached to the larger stations, all perfectly preserved, as if their crews had just stepped away for a moment. Captain, I'm detecting power signatures from multiple structures, reported communications specialist Kim Gi-won. Her fingers danced across her control panel, trying different frequencies and scan types. But there are no communications, no responses to our signals, nothing. Dr. Choi Suman, the expedition specialist in ancient cultures, moved from station to station, collecting data. Her eyes were bright with the thrill of discovery. Captain, the energy readings suggest these structures are still functioning, but they're operating on minimum power, like they're waiting for something. Minho stood up and walked to the main view screen. Waiting for what? I don't know, Suman admitted. But the construction methods, the materials, this technology is far beyond anything humanity has achieved. I'd estimate these structures are at least 50,000 years old, possibly older. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet beeping of instruments. Everyone stared at the alien constructions floating peacefully in space. There was something unsettling about their perfection, their silence. Sir, Nam Seojin called out softly. I'm detecting similar structures in the next system over. And the one beyond that. For the next 3 weeks, the Prometheus Rising traveled from system to system. Each location revealed the same pattern: massive space stations, abandoned cities, on planets, and technological marvels that made human achievements look like children's toys. Yet, everywhere they looked, the same eerie silence greeted them. On the planet they named Silent World, Dr. Suman led a ground team through cities that stretched across entire continents. The buildings were intact, the streets clean, and everything was perfectly preserved. But there were no bodies, no signs of struggle, no evidence of disaster. It's like they all just stopped, Suman reported to Minho over the radio. There are half-finished meals on tables, books left open, art projects abandoned mid-creation, but no people. Back on the ship, Kim Gi-won studied the communication networks she'd discovered. Captain, these aliens had a galaxy-wide communication system. The technology could send messages across the entire galaxy in minutes. But the last signals were sent exactly 49,847 years ago, according to our calculations. What were the messages about? Minho asked. We're still translating, but they seem to be saying goodbye. Not to each other, but to wakefulness itself. The crew gathered in the main briefing room as Dr. Suman presented her findings. She had discovered libraries, art galleries, and scientific laboratories on dozens of worlds. All showed the same pattern. These weren't primitive civilizations, she explained. They had mastered energy, matter, even time to some degree. They could have lived forever, traveled anywhere, built anything they could imagine. So what happened to them? Asked Park Hannah. They chose to sleep, Suman replied. Every record I've found suggests they reached a point where they decided consciousness was too difficult, too painful. They chose peace over progress, rest over struggle. Engineer Nam Seojin leaned forward. But why would advanced civilizations choose to give up? Maybe they got tired of trying, Kim Juan suggested quietly. Maybe they solved all their problems and found life boring. Minho stared out the briefing room's window at another silent station drifting past. Or maybe they were waiting for something, someone. As the weeks turned into months, the crew of the Prometheus Rising mapped system after system of sleeping civilizations. Hundreds of species, thousands of worlds, all choosing the same eternal rest. The galaxy was a vast graveyard of dreams, beautiful and terrible in its silence, but humanity remained awake, still dreaming, still reaching for the stars. In a universe that had chosen sleep, they were the only ones still fighting to stay conscious, still believing that tomorrow might bring something wonderful and new. Dr. Choi, Sumin wiped the sweat from her forehead as she worked in the dim light of the alien facility. 3 months had passed since they established Research Outpost Alpha on the planet they called Sleeping Stone. The ancient building she explored was unlike anything humans had ever seen, with walls that seemed to flow like water but felt solid as metal. She had been carefully studying a large crystalline structure in the center of the main chamber. It was beautiful, like a giant diamond carved with intricate patterns that hurt to look at directly. For weeks, it had remained completely dark and silent, just like everything else they had found. Just one more scan, she muttered to herself, connecting her portable scanner to a small port she had discovered at the base of the crystal. The moment the connection was made, everything changed. Blue light exploded from within the crystal, racing along the carved patterns like liquid fire. The entire chamber filled with a gentle humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere. At once Sumin stumbled backward, her heart pounding as the massive structure came alive before her eyes. "Captain Lee, you need to see this," she called into her communicator, her voice shaking with excitement and fear. "Something incredible is happening here." Within minutes, Captain Lee Minho arrived at the facility with Engineer Nam Seojin close behind. Both men stopped in the doorway, staring at the glowing crystal that now dominated the room with its soft blue radiance. "Suman, what did you do?" Minho asked, approaching carefully. "I interfaced our scanning equipment with their systems," she explained, her hands moving quickly over her tablet as data streamed across the screen. The moment our technology touched theirs, it activated. "But Captain, that's not the strangest part." She pointed to her tablet, which now displayed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of tiny dots were scattered across the image, and as they watched, more and more dots began to glow with the same blue light as the crystal. "Each of these lights represents an alien installation," Sumin continued. "And look at this pattern." She highlighted the glowing dots in a different color. Every single activation point corresponded exactly to locations where human ships or equipment were present. Nam Seojin stepped closer to examine the readings on his own scanner. "This is impossible," he said quietly. "The power surge from this single crystal is somehow communicating with installations light years away, instantly. We're triggering something," Sumin realized, her voice filled with wonder. "Our neural patterns, our technology, maybe even just our presence were like a key that's been unlocking doors across the galaxy." The crystal pulsed brighter, and suddenly the air above it shimmered. A holographic display appeared, showing detailed star maps, technical diagrams, and symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. "Captain," came the crackling voice of Communications Officer Park Gina, through their headsets, were receiving signals from across the sector, hundreds of them. The installations that were dormant are suddenly transmitting. Minho pressed his communicator. What kind of signals? Data transmissions, mostly. But there's something else. We're detecting movement on several worlds. Ships launching from hidden bays. Structures rising from beneath planetary surfaces. It's like entire civilizations are waking up. In the crystal chamber, the holographic display continued to expand. Now it showed not just the galaxy, but time itself. They could see the progression of the awakening, spreading outward from each human location like ripples in a pond. Look at this, Namseojin said, pointing to a section of the display that showed technical readouts. The alien systems are analyzing our equipment, our ship designs, even our biological signatures. They're learning about us. Sumin studied the flow of information with growing amazement. It's not just learning, it's comparing. Look, these patterns here represent different species, different civilizations. The system is checking us against some kind of database. The crystal suddenly flared brighter, and new symbols appeared in the holographic display. Even without being able to read the alien language, the meaning was somehow clear. A match had been found. Captain Park, Gina's voice came through the communicators again, more urgent this time. Long-range sensors are picking up massive ships moving through hyperspace. They're heading toward human colonies throughout the sector. Eta varies, but the first ones will arrive within hours. Minho stared at the expanding web of light on the galaxy map. Each new activation represented another sleeping civilization stirring to life. The pattern was accelerating, spreading faster than they could track. Sumin, can we shut this down? He asked. She shook her head. I don't think so, Captain, and I don't think we should. This system has been waiting for 50,000 years, for someone exactly like us to activate it. But why us? Namseojin wondered aloud. What makes humans special? The holographic display shifted again, showing images that took their breath away. Star maps spanning millions of years. The rise and fall of countless civilizations, and through it all, a recurring pattern. Every few 100,000 years, a species would appear that refused to sleep, refused to give up, refused to accept that existence was too difficult to endure. We're not the first, Sumin whispered. There have been others like us, species that carried the fire when everyone else chose darkness. Outside the facility, the sky began to glow as the first alien ships in 50 millennia descended from the stars toward the human outpost. Humanity had spent centuries wondering if they were alone in the universe. Now they had learned they were. Something far more significant. They were the alarm clock for an entire galaxy that had forgotten how to dream. Captain Lee Minho felt his stomach drop as the warning alarms filled the bridge of the Prometheus Rising. Through the main view screen, space itself seemed to tear open as massive ships emerged from hyperspace. Not one or two vessels, but hundreds, arranged in 3 distinct formations that surrounded the human research fleet. Battle stations, Minho ordered, though he knew their small exploration ships would be no match for the technology displayed before them. The alien vessels were works of art and terror combined, their hulls gleaming with materials that seemed to bend light itself. Captain, I'm reading energy signatures, unlike anything in our databases, reported Engineer Namseojin, his voice tight with tension. These ships could vaporize our entire fleet without breaking a sweat. The largest ships positioned themselves in a triangle formation around the humans. Each group was clearly different from the others. The ships on the left were sleek and silver, their surfaces perfect and unmarked. The center group appeared organic, their hulls flowing and curved like giant sea creatures. The ships on the right looked battle-scarred and ancient, covered in weapons and armor plating. Incoming transmission, announced Communications Officer Park Gina. They're speaking Korean, Captain. The main screen, divided into 3 sections, each showing a different alien face. Minho had to steady himself against his command. chair as he looked upon the first non-human intelligence humanity had ever encountered. On the left screen appeared a being with silver skin that seemed to glow with its own light. Its eyes were pale blue, like chips of ice, and when it spoke, its voice carried no warmth or emotion. "We are the conservators," it said in perfect Korean, though its mouth barely moved. "You have disrupted the Great Rest. The galaxy chose peace. 50,000 years ago. You will be cleansed from existence so that harmony may return." The center screen showed a creature that was both beautiful and alien. It had 4 arms that moved gracefully beneath flowing robes, and its face was kind but sad. When it spoke, its voice sounded like a gentle parent speaking to a troubled child. "We are the shepherds," it said softly. "You are children lost in chaos, burning yourselves out with meaningless struggle. We will guide you to proper sleep, where you will find the peace that has escaped you for so long." The right screen displayed something entirely different. The being there looked like a warrior who had fought 1,000 battles. Scars covered its face, and its eyes burned with orange fire. Unlike the others, when it spoke, there was joy in its voice. "We are the embers," it declared. "You carry the ancient fire that we thought had died forever. We have waited so long for your return, fire bearers." Dr. Choi Suman stepped forward from her science station, her tablet in hand. "Captain, I've been studying the archaeological records since the awakening began. There are references throughout the ancient databases to something called fire bearers." "Explain," Minho said, not taking his eyes off the 3 alien commanders. "Species that appear every few 100,000 years?" Suman continued. "They're described as beings who refuse to accept that existence is suffering, who keep fighting and creating and exploring even when everyone else chooses to sleep." The Ember Commander, who had introduced himself as Vexter, nodded approvingly. "Your Dr. Suman speaks truth. Your species never learned to sleep when others sought peace. This gift is why civilizations rise again after the long darkness. You are the flame that lights the way forward." The conservator leader spoke again, its voice like ice cracking. "The fire bearers are a disease. They bring chaos, war, and endless suffering. The galaxy chose rest for a reason. The galaxy chose death." Vexter shot back, his orange eyes flaring brighter. "You call it peace, but peace without growth is just slow dying." The shepherd leader raised all 4 arms in a calming gesture. "Both of you speak in extremes. The humans simply need guidance. They can learn to find contentment, to stop their restless burning that brings them only pain." Minho found his voice. "We didn't ask to wake you up. We were just exploring." "Exactly," Vexter said, with what might have been a smile. "You explore because you cannot help yourselves. You create because sitting still feels like death. You are what we used to be, before we grew tired and chose the great rest." Engineer Nam Siajin whispered urgently to Minho, "Sir, the conservator. Fleet is powering weapons. Energy readings are off the charts." On the screen, the silver-skinned conservator leader's eyes grew colder. "The decision has been made. Humanity will be cleansed, and the embers who support them will be returned to proper sleep. The galaxy's peace will not be disturbed again. You will have to go through us first," Vextar declared. Around his flagship, the scarred vessels of the Ember Fleet powered their weapons in response. The shepherd leader looked pained. "Violence will only prove that consciousness leads to suffering. But if humans must be protected while they learn wisdom, then we will stand with the embers." Minho realized he was witnessing something extraordinary and terrifying. Humanity had become the center of a philosophical war that had been brewing for 50,000 years. On one side stood those who believed peace was worth any price, even the price of dreams. On the other stood those who believed that struggle and growth were what made existence meaningful. The galaxy had awakened, and now it would decide whether the future belonged to eternal sleep or eternal flame. Admiral Lee Minho stood on the command deck of the New Dawn. watching the stars through the massive viewport. 6 months had passed since the first alien contact, and everything had changed. His small exploration ship had been replaced by this powerful vessel, and his crew had grown from dozens to thousands. The weight of his new rank still felt strange on his shoulders. "Admiral, incoming report from Outpost 7, called Captain Park Hannah from her station." She now commanded her own ship, the Rising Star, but today she was coordinating the refugee operations from the flagship. Minho turned to face her. "What's the status?" 3,000 ships have arrived from the Spiral Arm systems. They're carrying beings from at least 15 different species, all choosing to stay awake instead of returning to sleep. Hannah's voice carried wonder. "They're saying they want to remember what it feels like to dream again." Through the viewports, Minho could see the proof of humanity's strange effect on the galaxy. Human settlements now dotted 12 star systems, and each one glowed with activity. Alien ships of every shape and size orbited the human outposts, their crews working together on projects that would have been impossible just months before. "Dr. Choi." Suman's voice crackled through the communication system from her research station. "Admiral, the pattern is spreading faster than we thought possible. Every time humans work alongside the awakened aliens, more sleeping worlds activate. It's like awakeness is contagious." "How many worlds are we talking about?" Minho asked. "Thousands, sir. Maybe tens of thousands. The Ember faction is growing stronger every day, as more species choose consciousness over sleep." But not everyone was happy about the galaxy's awakening. The conservators, those silver-skinned beings who valued peace above all else, had been building their strength as well. Their leader, the cold creature who had first threatened humanity, had declared war on what he called the Chaos Fire. "Admiral," reported Communications Officer Kim Taeyeon from his station. "Long-range sensors are detecting a massive fleet movement. The conservators are gathering everything they have." Engineer Nem Seojin, who now headed the joint technology project between humans and aliens, rushed onto the command deck with his tablet. "Sir, I'm reading 10,000 ships. Maybe more. They're calling it the Great Fleet." Minho felt his blood run cold. 10,000 ships, all equipped with technology designed to put entire star systems back to sleep permanently. Nam Seojin continued. "They're not just trying to defeat us, Admiral. They want to force the entire galaxy back into dormancy." The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Human and alien engineers worked side by side, trying to prepare defenses for a battle that seemed impossible to win. The conservator ships were not only more numerous, but far more advanced than anything in the Allied fleet. "Sir," Nam Seojin said quietly, approaching Minho's command chair, "I've been thinking about this all wrong. We can't win this battle with weapons." "What do you mean?" "The conservators chose sleep because they forgot what made life worth living. They forgot the joy of discovery, the thrill of creating something new, the wonder of seeing a beautiful sunset or hearing a perfect song." Nam Seojin's eyes were bright with sudden inspiration. "We don't need to defeat them with superior firepower. We need to show them what they've been missing." The idea was so simple it was brilliant. Working around the clock, human and alien engineers created something the galaxy had never seen. Devices they called inspiration bombs. Instead of carrying explosives, these weapons carried the combined dreams, art, music, and aspirations of a dozen awakened species. The final confrontation took place above New Prometheus Colony, humanity's newest settlement. The Conservator Great Fleet arrived like a silver wall of death, their weapons charging with enough power to burn entire worlds. "All ships, this is Admiral Minho," he announced over the fleet-wide communication system. "Today we fight not for conquest, but for the right to dream. Launch inspiration bombs on my mark." The battle began unlike any in galactic history. Instead of energy beams and missiles, the Allied fleet fired their strange new weapons at the enemy ships. Each device exploded in brilliant colors, filling space with holographic displays of art, music, and the hopes of awakened beings. First, the conservator ships continued their attack, their cold precision unaffected by the strange assault. But then something unexpected happened. One by one, conservator vessels began to slow, then stop completely. "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from enemy ships," reported Kim Taeyeon, his voice filled with amazement. "Their crews are... they're crying." On the main screen, Minho watched as the silver ships of the Great Fleet powered down their weapons. Inside those vessels, beings who had slept for 50,000 years were suddenly remembering what it felt like to feel wonder, to hope, to reach for something greater than simple peaceful existence. The battle was won not through destruction, but through inspiration. Across the enemy fleet, crews that had forgotten the meaning of dreams suddenly remembered why their ancestors had once reached for the stars. Space filled with ships from both fleets, as former enemies worked together to create something beautiful and new. The galaxy would never sleep again. Admiral Lee Minho stood at the observation deck of the Eternal Flame, his hands resting on the cool metal railing as he gazed out at the vista below. 50 years had passed since humanity first awakened the sleeping galaxy, and his once dark hair was now silver with age, but his eyes still held the same spark of curiosity that had driven him to explore the stars all those decades ago. Below the massive flagship, New Prometheus rotated slowly in the golden light of twin suns. The planet had been nothing but barren rock when they first discovered it, but now it bloomed with life from a dozen different worlds. Cities stretched across the continents, their architecture a beautiful blend of human engineering and alien artistry. Spires of crystal grew next to metal towers, while gardens filled with flowers that existed in colors human eyes had never seen before painted the landscape in impossible beauty. "It's hard to believe how much has changed," Minho said softly to himself, watching as children played in those alien gardens far below. Human children ran and laughed alongside young beings with blue skin, others with 4 arms, and some that floated through the air on gossamer wings. They played games that combined the traditions of multiple species, creating something entirely new. The sound of footsteps made him turn. Captain Kim Ji-woo approached, her uniform crisp and her bearing confident. At 35, she was the youngest fleet commander in galactic history, but more importantly to Minho, she was his daughter. "Father," she said with a smile, joining him at the viewport. "The Andromeda expedition is ready to launch. 300 ships from 15 different species, all volunteers." Minho looked at his daughter with pride. She had inherited his love of exploration, but she had also learned lessons from the past 50 years that he was still discovering. "Another sleeping galaxy to awaken?" he asked. "Perhaps," Ji-woo replied, her eyes distant with dreams of new frontiers. "Or perhaps we'll find others like US species that never learned to sleep, never gave up on the possibility that tomorrow might bring something wonderful." A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Dr. Park Soo-men appeared on the communication screen built into the observation deck's wall. She was the daughter of Minho's old friend, Dr. Choi Soo-men, and she had become the galaxy's leading expert on dormancy cycles and the awakening process. Admiral Soo-men said, her voice filled with excitement even through the digital transmission. "I wanted to give you the latest numbers before the expedition launches. Our calculations now suggest that the awakening cascade has reached 97% of all known civilizations in this galaxy." Minho shook his head in wonder. 97%. When we started this journey, I never imagined we would see numbers like that. "The age of the Great Sleep is truly over," Soo-men continued. "But that's not the most interesting part. The species that have awakened aren't just returning to their old ways of life. They're creating entirely new forms of art, science, and philosophy. The galaxy is more alive now than it has been in hundreds of thousands of years." Through the viewport, Minho could see the proof of her words. Construction ships from dozens of different species worked together in perfect harmony, building humanity's greatest achievement yet. The beacon of eternal dawn was taking shape in the space above New Prometheus, a massive structure that would broadcast a signal throughout the galaxy. What exactly will the beacon do? Jiwoo asked, following her father's gaze. It will ensure that no species ever again mistakes peace for progress, Minho replied. The signal will carry the combined knowledge and dreams of every awakened civilization. If any species in the future starts to fall into the same trap of eternal sleep, the beacon will remind them of what they're giving up. The structure was beautiful in its complexity. Crystalline towers spiraled around cores of pure energy, while metal frameworks connected elements that seemed to defy the laws of physics. It was part monument, part broadcast station, and part work of arts, something that could only have been created by multiple species working together. The first ships are launching for Andromeda, Jiwoo observed, pointing to the distant specks of light that were beginning their journey to another galaxy entirely. Minho watched the expedition ships disappear into hyperspace, carrying with them everything humanity and their alien friends had learned about the value of staying awake, staying curious, staying alive in the fullest sense of the word. You know what the strangest part is? He said to his daughter. We set out 50 years ago just to explore. We never intended to wake up an entire galaxy, to start a renaissance that would spread across millions of worlds. Maybe that's why it worked, Jiwoo replied thoughtfully. We weren't trying to conquer or control. We were just being ourselves curious, restless, always reaching for something more. In the distance, more ships prepared for departure. The galaxy burned bright with the fires of renewed ambition, exploration, and creation. Research stations orbited dead stars, bringing them back to life. Artists collaborated across species barriers to create works that transcended individual imagination. Scientists pushed the boundaries of what was possible, driven not by necessity, but by the pure joy of discovery. Humanity had found its place in the universe, not as conquerors or rulers, but as the species that reminded everyone else what it meant to be truly alive. The flame they carried was not destructive, but creative, not consuming but inspiring. As the eternal flame prepared to join the Andromeda expedition, Minho smiled. The adventure was just beginning.